Greetings. Welcome. I'm going to have another video. So I'm going to continue this Bible study on hell. Not the most pleasant topic. So far, I've kind of leaned towards more of the kind of like the ideas, like the location of hell and all of this backstory about Jonah and the devils and Satan and the angels going to hell and all that, right? I gave kind of this. Um, More of this stuff that's not really talked about very often. But now, um, I'm going to talk about my third point here. So I already talked about how hell is real and how hell is eternal. Those are my first 2 points. And I'm going to talk about how there's no escape in hell, fortunately. And I'm going to reuse an old verse, actually, one I already used. This is going to be Luke 16:26. So I already used this verse earlier. Luke 16:26 says, "And beside all this, between us and you there is a great gulf fixed, so that they which would pass from hence to you cannot, neither can they pass to us that would come from thence." So this is, this is that same passage. We're talking about Lazarus and the rich man, and there's a gulf, so you can't jump over it. Like there's no way to get from one to the other. So from Abraham's bosom into hell, and from hell to Abraham's bosom, you couldn't get across. And that's when they're literally on the same level. Well, now you have hell down here, and then you have heaven super high up. That gulf is even bigger than it was back then. Back then, it was like it was a gulf on Earth. It was a physical distance you could actually like measure, I think. Now it's not Abraham's bosom anymore. They're all in heaven. That gulf is so much more than it was back then. So then I'm kind of looking at the context of all of this, and that's how strong the gulf is between heaven and hell, like literally infinite. How many, it's such a big, even if you did have a physical location for hell up in the north, how far away is that? We don't know. We don't know how many light years that is. It's not something you can fathom, and you can't escape. If you're in hell, you can't escape. It's a bottomless pit. You just keep falling. Like literally refers to it as a bottomless pit. And I don't know how you can keep falling. I would think there's a bottom, right? There should be a bottom, but no, it says it's a bottomless pit. I don't know how that works. Like how does it loop around that it's bottomless? And so you cannot pass from one to the other. So like you just can't get from one to the other. And that's what's scary. It's like people think like, oh, in hell you can get out. No, there's no purgatory. There's no temporary resting place for you. It's just hell. It's just eternal burning flames. There is no middle ground. It's either a yes or a no. Either you're in heaven or you're not. And this is what you should be warning people about. So I'd like to read Genesis chapter 7. So Genesis chapter 7, verses 1. I'm going to read a few verses from Genesis chapter 7. This is going to talk about Noah and how he was escaping the flood. Jonah chapter 7, verse 1. "And the Lord said unto Noah, Come thou and all thy house into the ark, for thee have I seen righteous before me in this generation." So back then, that's how you got on God's good side. You were righteous, and God offered Noah a chance to save himself and his family. And later, he gave a similar chance to Lot and his family, but unfortunately, those results weren't quite as good. And so basically, what I'm saying here is like once the doors close, it's too late. So I'm gonna keep reading these verses. So that was verse 1. Now verse 16. Verse 16. "And they that went in male and female of all flesh, as God had commanded him, and the Lord shut him in." So the door was shut. So once Noah and his family went into the ark, the door got shut, and anyone outside couldn't get in. One day, God's going to come back. Jesus Christ is going to come back. The tribulation is going to start. Well, before the tribulation, the rapture is going to happen. Once the rapture happens, that door closes, and the tribulation starts. Now, you can still get saved in the tribulation. In the book of Revelation, it kind of details that. But it's a little different. It's not going to be, trusting in Jesus at that point. I mean, Yeah, like especially in the millennium, it won't be like that at all because you're going to see Jesus. You're not going to need faith. Like it's going to go back to sort of a work salvation. And yeah, I know some people are going to say that's heresy, but if you study out the Bible and dispensations, you will start to see some of these things. And okay, so you want to get saved now. Now, getting saved now is so easy. You just trust in Jesus. That's it. You just trust in Jesus. That's how you're saved. Very, very simple church age salvation, right? That's how you get saved in the New Testament, in the church age. Right now, for the last 2,000 years, this is how you got saved. The past 2,000 years, you got saved by trusting in Jesus Christ. Before those 2,000 years, before Jesus Christ, it was a little different. How exactly? You can get a little complicated in discussing that. After Jesus Christ, after the rapture, it switches again. It's going to be something else. It's going to be the tribulation, and it's going to be a little different. It's going to be different, and you don't want to go through that tribulation. If you're a lost person, and you're around during the tribulation, now first of all, I'm just going to say, if all of a sudden, if you know the Bible, if you did not want to trust in Jesus Christ, so let's say that, but you knew enough Bible. Like you knew enough, sort of, you kind of heard the gospel before, and you knew enough Bible. When you just magically all of a sudden see millions of people vanish off the planet, just millions, babies, old people, young men, women, every gender, race, whatever, every body type, whatever you want, like all sorts of different people off the planet, all various places on Earth, just magically vanish up and just disappear all of a sudden. That's going to be crazy. People are going to freak out all over the planet. That's been detailed. There's been books written about the how started tribulation, and yeah, it will be crazy. People are going to freak out. Someone's going to be driving a car, and all of a sudden they're gone, and the car is going to crash into someone. There's going to be a lot of people that die at that moment just because of all the accidents caused by all these people magically vanishing when they're supposed to be somewhere. What if one of those people is an airplane pilot? And that plane starts, crashes or something. Like there's all sorts of stuff that's going to go wrong. It's going to be a very chaotic day. Let's just put it that way. When that day arrives, for the people that are left, behind, for those people, and you don't want to be one of those people. Those people that are left behind, yeah, they can still get saved, but it's going to be different. It's going to be a tribulation type of salvation. And some people are going to believe. Once they see that happen, they're going to be like, whoa, okay, the Bible's right. They're going to see that happen, and they're going to believe. Now, some people aren't going to believe, even after seeing that happen. They're not going to believe in the Bible, which just shows you how crazy people are. Like, that's how crazy. Knowing what the Bible said this was going to happen, it happens. Some people will believe it because they're going to say, yeah, that's crazy. And then some people still won't, even though the Bible just literally prophesied that this event was going to happen. There was going to be a rapture. So all of a sudden, all these Christians are just going to be gone. You do not want to be left behind. So this would happen. That door shut, and those people could not get on the ark. That was it. So you don't know when that day is going to happen. All of a sudden, the flood started. Well, the tribulation is going to start all of a sudden on a certain day, and you don't want to be here when that happens. You want to be on the ark. You want to be saved. You want to have God. You want to have Jesus Christ's protection on you, and have God's protection on you. Just like those Israelites. In Egypt, they put the blood on their door to say we're one of yours. So there's something you need to do to say you're one of God's, and that's trusting in Jesus. You want to say you're one of God's. You want to be one of Satan's. So yeah, so that's verse 16. So the door got shut, and then verse 21 to 24. I'm going to finish this off. This passage here in Genesis 7, chapter 7, verses 21 to 24. And all flesh died that moved upon the earth, both of fowl and of cattle and of beast and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, and every man. All in whose nostrils was the breath of life, of all that was in the dry land, died. And every living substance was destroyed, which was upon the face of the ground, both man and cattle, and the creeping things, and the fowl of the heaven, and they were destroyed from the earth. And Noah only remained alive, and they that were with him in the ark. And the waters prevailed upon the earth 150 days. So yeah, there lots of stuff to say here, as always. Interesting passage. So all the animals died. So yes, the fish, it doesn't say the fish died. It doesn't say the whales died, because because they're swimming. They got spared. Unfortunately, everyone else didn't. All the animals on earth didn't. So for the sin of mankind, everyone suffers. So just remember, when you sin, you don't just affect yourself. Your sin doesn't affect you. When Adam and Eve sinned, they affected all of mankind. When man sins, they affect their planet. When you sin, you affect your family, you affect the people around you. You don't live onto yourself. Any positive or negative action you take generally will have outward effects on those around you. Very important. You don't live onto yourself. You do influence others. And so you want to be worthy of that. So here, and then animals, same thing. The animals died with the humans for their sins. All in his nostrils was the breath of life of all that was in the dry land died. So everything got destroyed, and only Noah and his family was alive. Got saved, and the water continued for 150 days. So it took a while. I mean, I think that the whole timeline's kind of long. Like the water fell for a certain amount of days, then it lasted, then it started to drain. I think after the whole thing, it took like a year. It literally took a year for them to get off the ark. And anyway, and for those that don't believe in the ark and how all this made sense, there's a brilliant museum called the Creation Museum in Kentucky, which I visited, I think a year and a half ago in Kentucky. And it was great. It shows the ark, and Ken Ham and his whole team, they're pretty good. They went like completely, they're trying to prove the science behind the Bible. So very, very good. Christians do need to get educated on that stuff. So I thought it was a great place. So the Creation Museum, and it's in Kentucky. If you're ever interested in going there, it's a pretty cool experience. You get to see the ark. Anyway. So yeah, basically, this is another time that God pretty much destroyed the whole earth. Now, this is a water destruction. It's not a fire destruction. Fire is much worse. We'll get into that. How fire is much worse. This is a watery destruction, and this goes into a lot of very interesting topics, because this talks about how prior to the flood there were like ancient civilizations. There was an ancient civilization and they had stuff, and their artifacts, some of the artifacts from these ancient civilizations are still around. Like the pyramids, which I mentioned in the previous video, that is something that exists, that was more than likely built during that era before the flood, because we don't have an explanation for how it got built. And recently I actually watched a video on this on YouTube, very interesting. These weren't even Christian people. A lot of scientists now are studying all of this, like, archaeology and all these old things, and there's just certain things that don't really make sense, and their conclusion they've come to is that civilization has peaked before. There have been civilizations in the past which crumbled, and then and then all of a sudden they went up. So civilization doesn't just go like this, right? It goes up and down. There's cycles, because civilization goes down and up. So like the Roman Empire was a pretty good peak. After the Roman Empire fell, civilization went downhill for a while. And then, later it picked up again and went up. And so this is actually good, because it actually defends the Bible in this way, because the Bible, you have this ancient civilization before the flood. So now scientists and historians are starting to see this, and they're starting to say, like, yeah, there were ancient civilizations that fell, and that we have these ancient artifacts that it doesn't make sense. Like they had something superior in the past, and then it went downhill, and then later we had something worse. And, like I said, the pyramids, that's one of those things where it kind of starts making them think. But other than the pyramids, they've noticed other things around the earth where it's like, hey, yeah, that doesn't make sense. Like, they would notice animals that shouldn't exist where they exist, and they'll notice traces of human activity in places where it doesn't make sense for them to exist, and they're starting to really change their timeline. Now, their timeline's still going to be wrong, because it's not going to be the biblical timeline. They're still going to use millions of years to explain this stuff. They're still going to use these huge giant time figures which don't make any sense. But it's still interesting that they are starting to understand. So basically, just know this: the Bible is always right, and history and science are playing catch up. They're trying to prove what's in the Bible. They will eventually maybe learn what the Bible says. Maybe, eventually. Possibly. But possibly they won't. So anytime they say the Bible is wrong, eventually they will realize they're wrong. It might take hundreds of years, though, before they realize they're wrong. And it's happened in the past. Every time they ever said the Bible was wrong, eventually they found archaeological evidence to prove the Bible was right. That happened every single time. So just know the Bible's right. If archaeology says it's wrong, archaeology is wrong. Once, eventually, maybe, they will find something that will prove the Bible. It's going to happen. It's somewhere out there. But just know that science and the Bible, science and history, they just play catch up. They're just trying to, they will always be proven wrong unless they agree with the Bible. That's like literally what's going to happen every single time. That so far, that's what's happened every single time. They have not proven the Bible wrong a single time. It just hasn't happened, and it won't happen. So just know that. Just know that that's the case. But whenever history and science confirm the Bible, great. It's like, oh, cool, we have archaeological evidence for this. I already believed it. I already believed the Bible. But it's great that I now have archaeological evidence to support this belief, which I should have already believed to begin with, because that's what God said. So, and they would, anyway, I could go along about different kings that they said never existed, and later they found out they did exist, because the Bible said this king existed, and, they would say it didn't. This king never existed, and then later they found out this king did exist. So, it happens all the time. Anyway, so like always, I'm going off topic, but anyway, just giving you all this detailed information about the background of those times. But the events here, though, are catastrophic. You're talking about basically a genocide, just complete destruction of the entire human race, and 8 people lived. Now, I'm hoping that when the rapture happens, the odds will be much better. I'm hoping that it won't just be a ratio of 8 people to I don't know how many million of people existed during the 1,700 year time frame from Adam's creation and the flood. That was about a 1,700 year time frame. I don't know how many people would have been born. There's estimates, maybe a couple 100 million. That's possible. They're saying it is possible, and I do agree that it is possible. If you look into the mathematics, it's totally possible for the human population to be where it's at now, from the initial population of 8 people over the course of 4,600 years. The math checks out. So you don't have to believe evolutionists and their population numbers. The math makes sense. Okay, the math makes sense. It is possible for the human population to be where it's at, given 8 people in the year 2300 BC. Totally possible. You can run the numbers. It totally makes sense. So, regardless of what, you don't need millions of years to get to a population of 8 billion. Okay, you do not. So, exponential growth is a really amazing thing. Like it really is. It's crazy. So anyway, what I was getting at, I get off topic a lot. So this thing here. Okay, yeah, I just totally blanked for a moment there. That's what happens when you get off topic. So you have 8 people, the ratio of 8 people to hundreds of millions. So 8 people saved versus hundreds of millions that died. I'm hoping this is crazy. And Noah preached to these people for 120 years. He preached to these people for 120 years, and they did not want to get on the boat. That's scary. 120. He preached, and these people lived a long time. They had a much longer time frame to live and to listen and listen to God. Our lifetimes are not quite as long as those people back then. They lived 800, 900 years. So that's crazy. Now that I think about it, their world was worse, actually. I don't know. They had way more time to get saved. They didn't. Way more people drowned. You had 8 people on the boat. There are more than 8 Christians. And yeah, we have billions of people. We have a lot more people on the planet than they did have back then. But I think the ratio of saved people to unsaved is much better than during Noah's day. So if you think about it that day, it's not quite as bad. But Still, that is a huge number of people, and that's everybody. Now, I don't know how those people, like, yeah, I don't know how those people got judged. Maybe they got judged by their conscience. There were babies there. God's not going to send babies to hell. There were young children there. Those are innocent. So I don't, they're free. I don't know how God's judged the adults that drowned. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be a very good judgment. That's going way off. Like I don't know how during the church age, I know how God judges people. You trust in Jesus Christ. Back then, before the time of, before Jesus died, you got judged by conscience. You got judged by works. And, it's I don't know. I mean, this is not something we have an answer to, how God judged these people. But that's a lot of people. It's hundreds of millions back then. And only 8 got saved. Now, there are millions of Christians all over the planet of different races and, genders and ages and all of that, right? And, all different walks of life. And unfortunately, I'm way more people that are unsaved from, that's what I'm going to say. There's a lot more non-Christians. I don't know what the ratio of saved to unsaved is on the planet. We can only speculate. But it's much better. But still, you want to avoid that eternal hell. It's still a minority. It's still a minority. God is not willing that any should perish. We want as many people saved as possible. You don't want to be like those that drowned in the flood. So, so there could have been an earth before, like when Lucifer and Satan fell, there could have been an earth back then that got destroyed. Who knows how God judged that? Another destruction with the flood. Then you've got a lot of minor struggle. You got like Sodom and Gomorrah. You got all these like minor things. And then we're going to have the tribulation. We're going to have another destruction. So we have references to these things in the past. We have examples of total destruction in the past. And there will be a time when it happens again. And you want to be on God's side when that happens. You want to be in heaven when that happens. You want to have made the right decision to trust in Jesus. You don't want to be left behind. You don't want to be on Satan's side when all of this occurs. And just to end this with like an illustration here. So yeah, you still have an opportunity. So I mean, get saved while you can, because and my illustration is about fire. Fire. This punishment here is fire. Fire has no maximum. Heat. There is no maximum temperature. There is an absolute zero. Negative 273 Celsius. There is a bottom temperature. Like you cannot get colder than negative 273 or 0 Kelvin. That's absolute zero, which is a very interesting point because that's when all molecules, that's when everything freezes. You can actually stop aging, which is what we get the cryogenic freezing that you're trying to do right now to achieve immortality, which is actually a pretty crazy idea. That can get off to another topic about what is heaven and all that. So I don't want to. I'll get too distracted if I start talking about that. So there is a bottom temperature, but hell, fire, the sun, I don't know what the temperature of hell is, but apparently it's super, super hot. So there is no maximum temperature. I don't think they've recorded a maximum temperature. Heat can go up as high as possible. So I don't know what the temperature of hell is. How many degrees Fahrenheit or Celsius it is, I have no idea. It's super hot, that's all you know. And it's an everlasting fire. Now, normally, if you got burned alive, which has been noted as one of the worst executions possible, is actually burning alive. That has been quoted by many people, that this is literally one of the worst ways to die. Maybe even the worst. Like literally burning alive is like the worst death. And some say that if you're better off just inhaling the smoke and suffocating, because you will die faster than having to continue burning. Like you're better off doing that because it's just that bad. It's like the worst. It's like the worst pain. I mean, just the other day, I accidentally touched a pot, it was hot, and I just burned myself. 1 second, you just touch something hot, your hand just jerks. Just 1 second, you touch something hot, you just jerk that. Okay, that's a little burn on one part of the body. What about just being consumed with that completely? Just completely that, and much worse than whatever just some flick. Like you immediately recoil. Like you cannot handle fire. Like you immediately recoil. Like that's not natural. Like we cannot, like we hate fire. Like our body cannot handle fire. You'll just burn. It's painful, incredibly painful. So burning like that eternally forever, that's just ridiculous. Like I can't comprehend that. That sounds like that's the worst form of like torture. That's like completely burning forever, eternally. And so to illustrate this, when the 9/11 incident happened over 20 years ago, and the plane crashed, and there were people that jumped off the building. So there was a fire behind them, and they had a choice. They can burn alive in that fire that's right behind them because the plane crashed, or they can jump off the building. And this is a super high building. I don't know how many floors, but you definitely died. And people chose to jump off the building. So when given the choice between burning alive and jumping off the building and just splattered, like it's just gruesome beyond belief, and how high up that was, they had a choice: burn or jump off the building. They jumped off the building because jumping off the building was less painful in their mind than that fire. Like that's how much we cannot handle fire. Like just burning in fire. That's literally the worst punishment. Like yeah, it's been quoted. It's literally been quoted many times. Like that. This is literally the worst type of execution. And so they had a choice, and that seemed a better way to go is to jump off like 100 stories. I forget what the height was of the the Twin Towers, but it was that bad. Like they just literally jumped off, and just like so that fire, but it's eternal and it's all over your body, and that's a scary thought. Like that's what you don't want. And there is no max temperature. We don't know what that is. And your soul, like if it was just your physical body, like you're just gonna burn up and die, right? That's it. You're done. Your pain goes for, I don't know. It's gonna like, well, I don't know how long it would take for you to burn. A few minutes, I don't know, or less, hopefully less. This is your soul burning. I don't know what it feels like to have your soul burning. It's your soul. It's your spiritual soul. That's what's burning in hell, because your physical body doesn't exist anymore. You have a soul, and your soul is burning. And I don't know what that feels like. I don't want to know what that feels like. But it says it's painful. It's everlasting, and like I don't know what that feels like, but it can't be good. And there is no max. Like I said, there's no max temperature. So this is not somewhere where you want to go. You want to go to heaven, and you want to let as many people know as possible, so they can go to heaven with you. So that's basically what I'm trying to get here at this sermon right here. As I'm trying to be all technical, analytical here, but like this is reality, and Jesus is going to come back one day. We want to be prepared, and this is why I'm leaving all these videos, all these channels, because this is all I can do. In our day and age, this just seemed like the best way. This is what God told me to do, so I started this video. Hopefully, as many people hear these videos and they can tell others. And yeah, because there is a need. There is a need for Bible teaching in our day. There's a need for the gospel. And there's always been a need for the gospel, and so that's what I'm doing. So this is the best way I can serve. So yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna end with this video, and then next time I'll continue. So this was my third point, which was that you cannot escape hell. It's inescapable. You will be stuck there. And my fourth point is going to be who goes there. That's going to be my fourth point. So yeah, so I understand it's supposed to be about hell, and I go off topic so much, but there's a lot of points. If I go off topic, it's still something I think would be useful. So yeah, I'll see you next time.